What's going on? So last time I showed you guys I have a new garage, and today we're going to use it. I have not touched the Nova since we moved in, actually. It's been about a month, and I've had lots of stuff I've wanted to do, but today, as you can see, I've already kind of gotten started. We're going to do it. Now this is covered in cardboard right now for protection, but it is a CXRacing air-to-air intercooler. And funny enough, I've actually heard really good things about CXRacing. Yes, a lot of their stuff is kind of made in China, that sort of thing. But if you know, like what you're looking for, their intercoolers can actually be a really affordable way to get a nice big core and actually pretty good quality setup. There's good quality welds and stuff. I'm gonna, of course, check for leaks and stuff like that and probably blow it out, make sure there's no debris or anything in there. But it looks pretty good, and I know people that are running CXRacing intercoolers on pretty aggressive street setups without issue, and they have been for extended periods of time. And so I figured it was a good bet. CXRacing also sells this bad boy. This is actually a TIG welded stainless steel, like laser cut piece that replaces this. This is the stock hood latch support piece. This is just stamped steel. It's basically like a fancy looking L bracket that would go right here. But the problem is, as you can see, that cuts into quite a bit of real estate for our large 3-inch core front mount intercooler here. So CXRacing sells this included with they have like a twin turbo V8 kit. I think it's an LS, twin turbo LS kit, turbo kit that comes with like everything, including intercooler, piping, like the whole nine. And that's their solution for this. And I'm going to be using basically just the hood latch and the intercooler from it, because their kit has, if I can show you here, basically has the core mounted like this with the end tanks and the inlet outlet on the bottom side. So that would place them here and over here, and the piping would actually route underneath the core support. I don't want to do that. I don't think that's very efficient for my setup. So I'm actually going to be going right through the core support, and there's basically no reason for me not to. I mentioned this before, but I'm going to be relocating the coolant overflow bottle here. Since the radiator cap is on the far side anyways, it kind of makes more sense to have it relocated down there anyways. And then I'll have some more real estate to basically get a pretty simple, basically kind of like a Z kind of formation here. But because I'm going to be flipping it upside down from where it's kind of originally intended to sit, I will have to basically see how it goes. But the top of the intercooler should come up to about here. So it should be, if not right where this circle is, maybe just below. So somewhere in this general vicinity here. So that should be pretty good. But it's basically mocking up, making sure I have an idea of what hardware and such I'm going to need, because I am going to need a couple more things. One thing is that this was just the intercooler, and it didn't really come with anything to mount the intercooler. It has these basically bungs that are welded into it with threads, and from there it's kind of up to you. So I'm going to have to go to the store, grab a couple bits of hardware, grab some pieces to make some mounting hardware for this. There's one lower mounting hole option there, gives you some freedom with the slot, which is kind of nice, and then the top kind of isn't here, so I'm gonna have to figure out what options I have. I don't really want to like make another bracket coming off of this, although I think I kind of could, but it would kind of start getting a little weird. And basically the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unbolt the bottom of this so I can fit the intercooler core in there and then see what I'm working with. All right, so as you can see, this is a pretty big intercooler, and these cars were, of course, never designed to have an intercooler from the factory. So, things are a little tighter than you might expect on like a S13 or something like that. But people run intercoolers on these pretty regularly in the aftermarket. So, there are options. This is pretty unique though. I'm glad that I was able to find this bracket because it allows me to retain the use of the stock hood latch, because I really don't want to get rid of that. I really don't want to have to use hood pins. I want to be able to kind of keep the OEM hood latch and all that. It's a little safer depending, and you know, it just keeps kind of a cleaner look on the car. So this is just kind of mocked up with the grill placed there. I know I'm going to have to do some trimming. I knew I was going to have to do some trimming around this area here, but I might also have to do quite a bit around the end tanks too, which I wasn't expecting. So this could get a little interesting. I already knew that I was going to have to trim out basically like these 4 squares were just going to have to go bye-bye. And yeah, so still kind of getting the lay of the land here. And another potential issue that I'm seeing is that I was hoping there'd be more kind of vertical space in here with the intercooler, and there's actually not. So first I was thinking maybe I could run a piece of flat stock kind of across both sides and then just kind of find a way to tie it in the bottom or what have you up here, or maybe something across the whole top just to kind of make it supported. I think what I'm going to have to do up top is make a couple little kind of like L or Z type brackets just coming from here. That's pretty easy. But underneath, as you can see, this does not have a whole lot of space right here. And that has to stay clear because that's part of the latch that moves. So basically this is going to have to sit kind of how it is, with the intercooler basically on the bracket, which, you know, I'm not opposed to. I might have to do a little bit of clearancing around here with this latch. Not a whole lot, but maybe some trimming just to the part that hangs down the lowest here, just to gain maybe like a 1/4 inch or so, because there's not really anything I can do about the intercooler itself. I will admit, I do kind of wish this was like an inch shorter, but this is the one they actually spec'd for this chassis, which is kind of funny. So there's that, and not everything is bolted together, so this will kind of like suck in a bit more, and it might even get a little bit closer to the top of the core there. And under here, I think what I'm gonna have to do is try to squeeze a bolt in here. Yeah, you know what, actually, what I might actually have to do, if I can find a location that I can get a bolt through, I'll just have to make some straps to go from here to the core support as well. I was hoping to kind of just make a nice straight, again, flat stock piece across here, tied into the hole that they have here in the middle. But like I said, I think it's gonna have to sit right on there, and there's not gonna be any room to fit the head of a bolt underneath the core, which is a little unfortunate. You know, every chassis is a little different, even with the same car. This versus somebody else's 71 Nova might just sit a little bit different when things are installed. So that's okay. And I kind of know what I have to do now, it's looking like. So I'm going to go to the hardware store, grab some stuff, and start feeling it out. Hopefully we can have this thing mounted up. All right, after a few hours and a few chores, got the hardware, got some nuts, bolts, all that good stuff, and a couple other little things that I'll probably need. Drill some holes and such, but I also got some flat stock. Just 1-inch aluminum strap, basically. I'm gonna cut. I'm gonna measure here in a minute, and then I'm gonna cut for little straps, top and bottom. And as always, I'm gonna be using some cardboard for a little template, and just to make things, you know, easy. Gonna, you know, kind of feel it out, measure it out a little bit. That's kind of how these things go when you're working with like kind of like 3-dimensional space. It's not like, oh, I gotta just go from here to here. It's like, well, I gotta go here and then bend up here and then kind of like go over, and you know, so gonna get to it. All right, so that was actually a little easier than I thought it would be, and funny enough, both strap styles basically ended up coming out to basically exactly the same length, which is pretty cool. So the top ones are going to be basically an L, like that, kind of an L. It's going to be a little bit angled. Going to be bolt through there, and then I'm going to drill a hole in the core support here for another bolt, and then of course one on the other side. And underneath, there's actually this flat spot next to the radiator down here that I'll drill a hole kind of in the corner, you know, up through there, and get under here to show you. We're gonna go from the mounting point on the intercooler here right over to that flat spot, and I'll basically drill the holes first and double check my length, of course, and drill a hole on one end of this and see exactly where we're at before I mark the other end to drill. But yeah, it should kind of be pretty flat. It'll kind of have to curve a little bit. You can kind of see it almost does like an S bend, but it's probably only like maybe a 1/4 inch total of like from one end to the other. So really not a lot. So let's go ahead and chop up this flat stock. All right, we got our 4 straps. I'm gonna drill them each kind of square off the end with 1 bolt hole, and then we'll be able to bolt it to the intercooler. Well, I'm gonna have to bend the 2 top ones first, bolt it to the intercooler, and then measure and mark for the second bolt hole. All right, got our 2 top pieces, and I'm cut, bent to the same, more or less, a mirror image of each other. And we're gonna go drill them out and then give them a test fit. Looking pretty good. Got some hardware for it. I'm using a combination of what came with the intercooler actually, and then also a couple extra like lock washers and such, but not too bad. I am going to trim this down, of course, but I left it long just in case it needed a little extra. Right, we're looking great. I got the edges kind of cleaned up as well. Kind of on the fence if I want to paint them black or what. I kind of like the raw aluminum look, so I might just kind of Scotch-Brite them to like a nice even brush finish, because there's kind of some gunk on this one and such. This one's okay, but and then probably maybe just kind of leave it like that. But got them all squared up, tightened down. I got everything lined up on the core. Make sure it's back all the way where it needs to be, and then I'm going to mark and drill for our core support mounting points. All right, we got 1 hole down. Looking good. I drilled it a little bit bigger so that the hardware has just a little bit of room to move, but it's still going to be pretty tight in the bracket. So that'll give us just a little bit of play here and there for like install and removal for stuff here and there. And if you're doing this kind of work yourself and you don't have one of these, it's called a deburr tool. And if you see how the hole is not like jagged, but I used a step drill bit, and it doesn't always leave a hole that's like as smooth as a conventional bit. So you can kind of see it has kind of like this triangular kind of, ness to it. So you just take one of these and it helps clean it up and gets it smoothed out a little nicer. This isn't like a super nice hole, so it doesn't really matter. I had to speed up a little bit high on the drill anyways, and I am going to come back later because this is steel. These are aluminum. These aren't going to rust. This is steel though. I'm going to come back later and give that a little bit of paint, but once I'm all done here. And time to drill the second hole. All right, there we go. Probably tell I cut the speed down a little bit more on the drill, and the hole looks a little bit nicer there. So still going to give our deburr. This one was a little bit different because it's actually, there's like this wrinkle kind of in the core support, which is supposed to be there actually. I've seen that on other cars. I confirm that's not like from damage or anything. All these wrinkles are from the factory stamping process. Just kind of how when they fold things over and bend it around and all that. That's just kind of how it comes out of the factory. You can see this is pretty dramatic right here. It looks like a pie crust almost, but that is supposed to be there. The front of my car isn't like all kinked in or anything like that. I mean, it's not like the straightest thing in the world, but that's mostly from like fender alignments, just the little things. But race car, so for now we're gonna mount this intercooler. Sweet, that is the top all done. Now this one is nice and straight. This one, because of that wrinkle, it does sit at just a little bit of an angle. I think I'm gonna come by maybe sometime with my sheet metal hammer and dollies and just flatten that out just there, because I don't really know why that wrinkle's there. It might be because this kind of comes out here for this bolt hole, which I don't know what that's for. Maybe it's for like AC or, you know, like automatic transmission cooler or something that this car may or may not have been optioned with. You know, just cars come with extra holes and stuff for different specs, different models and all that that aren't used on everything. So, you know, it's not uncommon to have just a random hole that you're like, well, what's that for? Well, you know, this car might not have used it, but another one may have that had a different spec engine or, you know, options, that sort of thing. So, gonna go drill the first holes in the other straps and then do a quick measure up, drill a couple holes in the bottom, and then get this thing finished up. Okay, so it's the next day. Basically, it took a little too long at the hardware store, and I ran out of time to finish up yesterday, but we're going to finish up today. And I was able to do a couple measurements for some things off camera because I kind of miscalculated. I kind of eyeballed the bottom, and long story short, these are not long enough, but I do have a bit more material that I'm going to try to make work. Basically, if I cut this in half, it'll just be enough, I'm hoping, to go from the bungs on the bottom of the intercooler to actually this hole that's on either end, right at the corner of the core support here, that is actually, as luck would have it, if I can get one of my bolts here, is just the right size. Oh, well, I don't know where my bolt went, but it's just the right size for the hardware that I selected. So that is perfect. That means I don't have to drill on this end, and I just have to drill on the actual straps themselves. So basically just going to chop this in half real quick and then drill it out. We'll do a little YouTube magic. All right, there it is. And I got a nice little bend to them, kind of like I said, just a little bit of an S bend, and got everything bolted up. I did kind of cut it close on the length of the bolts. They're basically exactly as long as they need to be. I would prefer, of course, to have, you know, like a thread or two at least poking through, but in this case, it's not like anything crazy. The upper ones are doing most of the work here, just kind of like holding it up. These are just kind of holding it from kind of, you know, moving around side to side, that sort of thing. So everything is looking great. And like I said, the only thing that I have to do from here is kind of like if I want to clean these up, I can do that kind of whenever. And then I am going to dab a little bit of paint in the holes that I drilled up here. And I don't have to worry about that down here because, like I said, I didn't have to actually drill into the bottom. So that's awesome. And everything is still perfectly lined up, top and bottom. So that is looking great. And now for the full effect. Oh, yes. That is pretty awesome to see. I've always kind of fantasized about having a huge front mount intercooler on this car. I don't know that I'll have enough time to kind of cut the grill and all that, but I think I'll do that on another day anyways, because, you know, I'm kind of trying to figure out what I want to do for that in terms of the grill. You know, I don't know if I want to keep the stock one or if I want to maybe make my own so I don't have to cut up the stock one, because just kind of doing the rough kind of like eyeball stuff, it doesn't look like there'll be much left, and I just want to see this with the hood closed. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty cool. And now you can kind of get the full effect without all the blue tape and everything. That's pretty sweet. Next step, I think, is going to be probably doing the intercooler piping since it's all right here. The intercooler will be in its final spot, and it's kind of going to come over at an angle this way right off the 90. Like the 90 is going to just whoop and kind of angle down a little bit to meet with this guy. This is basically going to be just kind of like 90 right out of the end tank, right through the core support, and then, you know, 90 right off here, and then it'll just kind of be an L between them. So it's kind of going to be one big Z that's kind of kinked at an angle. So nothing too crazy there. Over here is a little bit different. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it yet, because I do have over on the shelf somewhere, I do have a J-pipe delete kit from UpFab, same gentleman who did my awesome downpipe here. and that's going to simplify this stuff a lot. But the angle of this outlet for the turbo doesn't change like a whole lot. So I gotta see. Basically, I'm gonna take the J pipe off and then figure out kind of the spacing for those two pipes and figure out where I can put an intake and figure out where that outlet hot side charge pipe is going to land exactly. And like I said, this overflow, like, it could be here, but it's really, really tight. So I kind of get the feeling that it might end up, I really don't want it under the fender or anything like that, but we'll have to see. I don't think there's going to be any room over here either, because I'm planning on doing a remote power steering pump, like a Volvo one or maybe like a Vauxhall one. I'm not entirely sure which one I want to use just yet, but I think that's going to end up living somewhere on this frame rail as well. So I don't want things to get too messy. You know, I want to kind of keep things symmetrical if I can, and radiator caps on that side, overflow, perfect. You know, steering box on this side, power steering, perfect. So yeah, I'm hoping, you know, I know some people have some thoughts about such a big core radiator intercooler on this kind of a setup, but because the charge pipes are going to be relatively short, they're only going to be, God, maybe a couple feet at the most. And on your typical like S chassis or something like that, you're probably looking at another foot or more of piping on either side in the system. So keeping the piping relatively short will help with keeping kind of the whole volume in the system down. So I'll be able to have a nice, big, fairly efficient core and room to grow later on with the end tank size. That's kind of the whole point of why I went with such a big intercooler instead of like a 2.5-inch core or something like that. It's because I don't want to have to buy more than one. So, you know, down the line, if I'm making, hey, 6, 7, maybe 800 horsepower, whatever kind of craziness happens down the line with this thing, I want to just be able to just leave this guy in here, not have to worry about it. And that's about all I got for today. So if you liked what you see, you know, comment, subscribe, drop me a like, all that stuff. You can follow me on my Instagram. Find the link down below, find it on the screen, what have you. And yeah, I'll see you next time.